Hi, Terry Michael, the Bible Lady here. I'm on a new location. Today we're talking about from Shimon to Petros. Shimon, yes. Shimon is Hebrew for Simon. And I love the name Simon. In fact, I have a son, Simon, whom I love. I love both my sons. I love my daughters. I love my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren. Love them all. So Shimon is one of the names of the 12 sons of Jacob, one of the 12 tribes, Simon. And as I mentioned before, Jesus had a half-brother, Simon. So there's a lot of cool things in this segment about Shimon, or Simon Peter. In the past video I did of Oh Brother Simon, I covered how Peter said about Jesus. He said, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." And that was in Matthew 16:16. But what happened after that? Right directly after that. Well, in Matthew 16, 17, and 19, Jesus tells Peter these 6 things. He says, "Simon, you are blessed. Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah," is what he told him. So that salutation, Simon, son of Jonah, was different, and it's used in different ways. So we'll talk about that another time. That this, he tells Peter that this revelation didn't come from a person. Number 2. Secondly, he said, Jesus says his Father in heaven was the one who told Simon. So it was a revelation, and that's where revelations come from. They come from heaven. Then he tells him that he is now Peter, or Petros. So he went from Shimon, from hearing, which means hearing, Simon means hearing, to Petros, which means a piece of rock. It's not a boulder, it's not a rock, but a piece of rock. Then Jesus says that he will build, that was 3, that he changed his name. Then 4, he said he would build his church, the body of Christ, upon this rock. Now that name, that word for rock, is not Petros, but Petra. And it means a rock, huge. It refers to Jesus and not to Peter. Upon this rock, he's talking about himself. So you remember in the Old Testament, it was in Exodus 17, 5-6. God had told Moses to smite the rock for water. And that's the first mention in the Old Testament of the word Petra. But it's actually in Hebrew, it's Sur. It means rock or boulder. So look at this. The verse in verse 6, it says, "Behold, I will stand before you there on the rock at Horeb, and you shall strike the rock, and water will come out of it, that the people may drink." And Moses did so in the sight of the elders. That was the New American Standard Bible version. So God was standing on the rock. He told Moses to strike. What kind of God does that? What kind of God stands on the rock? He is the rock, and then he tells him, hit it. Only the most amazing, awesome God who has the best and most wonderful love for us in the world. That's the kind of God. So 5th, Jesus tells Peter that the gates of hell will not prevail against it. And that's really good news to the church. It will not prevail against the body of Christ. And 6th, he says, he gave Peter the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Wow, the keys. That's the authority. Keys signifies authority. So it's given to the body of Christ, and whatever we bind on earth is bound in earth, and let me go back. It's whatever we bind on earth is bound in heaven, and whatever we loose on earth is loosed in heaven. So really great stuff. So from that time on, then Jesus started to tell his disciples what was going to happen to him. Well, what was going to happen to him? Well, he was going to be killed, right? And he was going to suffer at the hands of the teachers of the law and the elders. But he told them he would rise again. Now, he told his disciples, now there weren't just only 12 disciples. Jesus had many, 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 many followers, lots of them, tons. So the apostles were 12. So Jesus had told many of his followers, remember the boat? in the boat. Peter was the only one who got out. We don't know how many disciples were in that boat, but because we always think 12, we think 12, 12, 12, 12. Well, it's not like that, because when Jesus had followers, it plural, there were many. Then this is where, when Jesus said this about dying, this is where Peter puts his foot in his mouth. He says, "Never, Lord, this shall never happen to you." Wrong thing to do. Now Jesus then turns and says, "Get behind me, Satan." Yes. Then Jesus tells them about laying down their life, and he says, "Some of you who are standing here will not taste death before you see the Son of Man coming in this kingdom." Well, what does that mean? That's 16:28, Matthew 16. Was the world going to end? And was Jesus going to come back then? No. This is what happened. After 6 days, it says that specifically. After 6 days, Jesus took with him Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. And they were standing there. There were some of those who were standing there, right? And so he took them and he led them up on a high mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured before them. And his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became as white as the light. He fulfilled the prediction that he gave in Matthew 16:28. The word transfigured here is metamorpho, meaning, now you didn't know I could speak Greek, right? That's a Greek word, metamorpho. And it means changing form. So just then there appeared before them Moses and Elijah talking with Jesus. Wow, Moses had been dead for over 1,700 years. So there he is. And Elijah was taken up like maybe 1,000 years before that. Awesome. But there they are talking to him. And regarding the transfiguration, Luke 9:31 says, Moses and Elijah spoke with Jesus about his death. So this was Peter at it again when he sees Moses and Elijah and Jesus. And he says, Lord, it's good for us to be here. If you wish, I will put up 3 shelters, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. Oh my gosh. Well, the word used here for shelter is skinny. Oh, another Greek word. I speak Greek. Okay. Skinny. It's Skene. He wants to put up 3 booths. But God takes care of it. I guess he figured there was too much sun. I don't know. But while he was still speaking, it says, a cloud covered them, a bright cloud covered them. And a voice from the cloud said, This is my son, whom I love, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him. Wow. And when the disciples heard this, now there were only 3 of them there, they fell faces down to the ground, terrified. But Jesus came and touched them. And he said, Don't be afraid. He tells us that too, doesn't he? And when they looked up, they saw no one except Jesus. Because if they saw Moses and Elijah, they might have thought God was talking about them. But he wasn't. He was talking about Jesus. So sometimes I'm like Peter's. I open my mouth and I put my foot in it, unfortunately. But evidently, Jesus overlooks our shortcomings. Jesus built his church through Peter. Peter's not the rock, Jesus is, okay? Peter is not the rock. And we'll see how that happened in another video. And I love discovering all these things about Peter. He was rambunctious, outspoken, but he was sincere. Above all, Jesus saw through his frailties and used this imperfect man to usher in salvation to thousands and thousands. God bless you till next time.